good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to a Founder's Testimony, the first of a 5-part webinar series presented by Equiticity. My name is Loni Swain. I'm going to be one of your hosts this afternoon. I'm a media personality and creative entrepreneur, and my other host this afternoon, Cecily.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cecily Langford. Thanks, Loni. Yes, I am so thrilled to be a co-host of this, a Founder's Testimony webinar today. And we are just beginning right now. And perhaps we'll give a minute, I want to say, to let a couple people enter. Unless anyone really objects, I feel like it might behoove us to just pause just a second and make sure people who want to get into the room get into the room. Is that fine?
Yes, it's Friday.
It's Friday, Loni. Damn near snowing in Chicago. People are cold and grumpy, and they're coming.
Yes, exactly. Taking a little minute to get out of bed this morning. That's okay.
Right. Yeah. I don't think you're calling from right here. Are you, Miss Loni?
No, I am in sunny California. I'm in Los Angeles. It's a little cool here, but that's relative. It's like 60 degrees. So I think that would be a good spring or summer day in Chicago sometimes.
Yes, definitely jealously waiting the 60-degree return. We've had a few fake springs, but we solidly had snow on the roof this morning, everybody. So you know,
I don't miss that. I love all things Chicago except the snow.
Yeah, feel ya. All right. Well, what are we thinking? Maybe we'll jump in soon.
Yes, I got one yes. Any other votes?
Okay. People
Okay.
look excited and ready.
So I say let's get started.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
So today we're going to be talking all about CMRs, a new acronym that I just recently learned, which stands for Community Mobility Rituals. I'm really excited about this conversation because I'm someone who, as a kid, I rode my bike up and down the street in my neighborhood with my father. But then kind of after that, I never got on a bike again. But until the pandemic, when everybody was like, let's get bikes, let's start walking, I too went out and bought a bike. I rode it like one time, but then I didn't have anyone to ride with. Then also with the pandemic, there's been, especially in Los Angeles, and I'm sure everywhere, a uptick in like the homeless population and mental illness and things like that. So riding a bike alone and walking alone didn't seem very safe. And so the only times that I would get out and do those things is when I found someone to do it with me. And that would sometimes be challenging. So much, you know, all that to say, my bike didn't get a lot of use. It has a lot of dust on it. So I wish that I had found some local community mobility rituals to participate in, especially during the time of like the pandemic, when that connection and outside activities were really all that we could do. Cecily, what has been your experience with CMRs personally?
Yeah, thanks, Loni. So my experience with CMRs personally, you know, the CMR is really the community mobility ritual is really why I'm even working with Equiticity at this point, right? So I absolutely needed to encounter a CMR in my life similar to what you aspire to encounter, because in serving as an administrator in a school that served North Lawndale and Little Village, you know, every day and all day you work in a divested area where you are consistently dealing with the outcomes, the results on children's lives of what that divestment is. And it can become, you can get inundated with a narrative, right? Like that's, you know, full of violence and full of, you know, it can be full of just disconnection and full of, you know, despair, quite honestly. And so my own connection was coming into the love ride, and in a time in society and in my professional pathway where it was a medicine. It was a medicine to me. It was healing. It was super emotional apparently, and it was just what I needed, and it really turned me on to just really reconnecting with people. You know, when you get to take over the street and you get to really see the power of who we are, and it really is a picture of liberation, that it just, once you see that and once you feel that, you can't really look the other way. It's very enticing, and like I said, it was a medicine to my soul. So and since then, you know, making relationship with Equiticity and other orgs, but namely Equiticity, to continue to build that work has been a pleasure and a joy. And so maybe we'll just spend a moment right now, just you know, reacquainting and setting a common definition of what is a community mobility ritual. I think people in this room know that, but just to restate that, you know, many people, you know, do these, but, you know, we really think at Equiticity, we codify these, and that they have consistent elements. Community mobility rituals have rhythmic frequency, a real prioritization on socializing, breaking down barriers, an intentional focus on racialized healing, that we try to reduce barriers to participation, whatever it kind of takes to get people involved, to get people rolling. We do that. That looks a variety of ways. We'll hear more about that. That there's a natural development in the CMRs to share customs, whether that's like a call and response thing, different little things that happen. We'll hear more about that, but that there are customs that grow and develop from the CMR. That we are in this moment actively disrupting the status quo as we roll down the street. That's another characteristic. And then lastly, like I spoke to, it really is a collective ownership of our space. This is space that we should own, we should access, we should control, and it does do that. And so it's so exciting to hear more about the how and the what of all of this from our panelists coming up right now. So I think before we do that, I think we're ready to hear directly from an experience through a video. So I think Oboi will share a video for us at this time.
We were what? 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 All day, every day, all day, every day.
We came together, community-based organizations, corporations, city agencies, we all came together to ride our bicycles on the street in North Lawndale to remind the brothers and the sisters who are in our community that there's a positive, embracing community that's waiting for them to make different choices. We're here to make sure that we achieve peace in North Lawndale.
The Street Love Ride was about boxing out negativity, joining forces with community organizations, community churches, community leaders, and riding through the streets of North Lawndale to show peace in the community, but most of all, to provide a great energy and violence prevention.
Thank you.
Soul to jazz, to my toes attack. How I look being told I'm not supposed to brag. Nobody fault, I tell the truth, I know.
We were what? We were what? We were what? We were what?
Yes, truly beautiful. In the chat, it comes there. Yes, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, like I think I didn't say one piece, which was to me, CMRs really flipped that script. Like they really flipped the script of this despair and this narrative that can happen, and it makes it our narrative and it comes alive. So it's extremely beautiful. So thank you, everybody. And thanks to that video to show us a little flavor.
Yes, for sure. And Cecily, your testimony was beautiful as well. And a reminder that sometimes alone we feel like we can't do something, but together we absolutely can. And we feel more empowered to do that. And so now we're going to speak with some founders who have answered the call to bring community mobility rituals together, and starting with our panelists. And if you could just list your full name, your position, your title, and your organization, and a brief description of your work. Starting with Oboi.
Oboi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Oboi, Olatunji Oboi
Reed. I am the founding president and CEO of the Equiticity Racial Equity Movement. We are operationalizing racial equity by harnessing our collective power through research, advocacy, programs, and community mobility rituals to improve the lives of Black, Brown, and Indigenous people in our society. Pleasure to be here with you all, and I look forward to rocking out together.
Next up, Derek.
How you all doing? My name is Derek Brown. I'm the founder of Boxing Out Negativity and I also serve as the executive director. Boxing Out Negativity mission is to target at-risk youth to provide a safe space to bring the best out of themselves. Thank you guys for having me here.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from RB, Reginald Burnett.
Hi, my name is Reginald Burnett. I'm an original member of the Scraper Bike movement, as well as extremely active in my community of East Oakland, which I serve every day. And my mission, Scraper Bikes, is 3 A's and a B, and I want to help a kid get a bike. So I spark creativity through getting kids to create bike art and unity.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being with us today. And next up is Nedra Deadwyler.
Thank you so much for the invitation to join you today, Loni and Cecily. It's great to be here. As mentioned, my name is Nedra Deadwyler. I'm the CEO of Civil Bikes. We host biking and walking tours in Atlanta with the mission to bring attention to unseen, unheard stories in a unique and accessible way that creatively builds a community and inspires action. A lot of our work is really situated around place and the importance of place. However, without the people being there, place is no longer important. And we cherish not just the idea of Atlanta, but actually what Atlanta is, which comes from the roots of the work, how people have shaped and formed and brought meaning, and that looking back and looking forward helps us to the future that really is inspired and a place where all of us can live and thrive.
Awesome.
So beautiful. All right, everybody. Well, now that we know a little bit about who's our panel, we would love to move forward into our discussion where they will answer some questions that we have floated out there. And just so everybody knows, after that, we will follow up with an audience question and answer piece. So if you're getting those questions going, great. You can save them for after our panel discussion, and we can put them in the chat or the Q&A box. So, all right, with no further delay, we will go into our first panelist question. So this goes to all the panelists, and we would love to hear from you. What is your personal and your organization's origin story? Again, what is your personal and your organization's origin story in this work? And we'll start with Oboi.
All right, cool. My personal and organizational origin story. So I was born on the south side of Chicago. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to go that far back. I'll start with sort of what brought me to this work. Some may know I struggle with mental health. I struggle with depression. And in a moment of crisis around mid-2000s, I turned to bikes and cycling as just one tool in my toolkit for my own mental health. I sort of became an advocate, co-founded Slow Road Chicago, and then founded Equiticity in about late 2017. For me, what I noticed early on as I became a more confident and enthused cyclist, that there was a distinct difference riding bikes on the north side of Chicago. For folks who are not from Chicago, that's predominantly white, middle to upper income, and riding bikes on the south and west sides of Chicago, predominantly Black and or brown and low to moderate income. There was distinct differences riding bikes in those two parts of the city. And from my perspective, because
cycling was so important to me, especially for my own mental health. And I knew that it could potentially be a value to more Black and brown people for mental health or physical health or jobs or helping to make our streets more vibrant. Whatever the reason was, I knew that reason was more it was more urgent in our neighborhoods and not as urgent in predominantly white, middle to upper income neighborhoods. And I question why, we didn't have the same bicycle resources as mostly white neighborhoods. And the reason that was given to me is what pushed me to do this work, and that is having a focus on racial equity. And that's what Equiticity is all about. When I first started Equiticity, I wasn't all that interested in bike rides because I had been doing that for several years with Slow Road Chicago, and I wanted to sort of focus on other policy areas and other sectors. And then I had the pleasure of meeting my dear friend, Coach Derek, with Boxing Out Negativity. And he asked me to help him on on a few rides, and I'm sure he'll talk more about this. One is a ride series they do every Friday night, and then another one was a huge ride that happens in North Lawndale. So as much as I was trying to do some other stuff, I got pulled back in, and it has been a blessing ever since.
Beautiful, thank you, Oboi. Let's hear from Derek.
My personal story, how you guys doing? My name is Derek Brown. I was born and raised in North Lawndale. I have to go back to the beginning. I was born in 1976, a drug-infested, gang-infested community. That's all I seen on the TV. That's all I stepped outside to see. And that was like a will is something that I want to do because that was all I see. I'm the type of learner that I imitate what I see, and that's what I became, a product of my environment. Joined the gang at the age of 13. At the age of 17, went to the penitentiary, and all type of hell that happened to me, being shot by the time I was 19. I ran a gang, and I made it to a point that I was tired. I was tired of destroying myself. And all as I glanced back at my life was tough. All the things that made me want to join the gang. So I think that was wrong. And as I was out the gang, I had to look back and see how can I prevent, these things. So I started watching a group of kids throw rocks at cars, and it just dawned to me. It was like I was watching myself again. It was like God placed me in a perfect moment, perfect timing to stop myself from damaging people's property. And when I was throwing cars at that time, when I was a kid, someone ended up getting killed. So I had to stop that. So I started teaching the youth how to box. Not really trying to start anything. I was just trying to, give the kids something that they was looking for, something that they needed, and there was some guidance, and give them some attention. So I started a boxing program, and what I noticed was it was nothing much to do in the community. So I started buying bikes. Every week when I got a check, I would buy a bike, and I was going to work in bikes. So as I ended up getting about 19 bikes for my youth, we would do these rides, and we'd ride through the neighborhood. And working bikes they was impressed that I kept buying these bikes. So I told them what I was doing with them. So they invited us to a biking event that was called Slow Road. So when I went to this biking event called Slow Road, and which was spearheaded by Oboi, and I was so impressed of connecting our youth to a different community, to different nationalities. And I was like, man, it's something cool. So this was like automatically something that I wanted to be a part of, just by watching the way Oboi had the guys with squad, how they were blocking the streets off, how they were moving. So it was like I had to imitate that. And as the time progressed and it grew, we committed to riding bikes. And what happened was it introduced us to a different world, a world that we had no clue that was out there. We was introduced to several biking events, a big event called Critical Mass, and just to see thousands of people moving together, different nationalities, nobody looking at each other sideways. I'm like, man, I was sold right there. So only thing that I can do is I wanted to implement that. I tried it on my own. It wasn't successful because I didn't know anybody. I knew the people in my community, but it wasn't that many bikes. So I connected with Oboi again and started talking to him about creating events like he did. And, with open arms, with acceptance, he wrapped his arm around our organization, connected us with his organization, and he shared his resources on making boxing out negativity a broader community, about making North Lawndale a broader community. So with my credibility, like I said, I was a gang leader. I was a drug distributor. So I still, even though I was out the gang, I still carried that weight as a great person, as a big person, a person of credibility. So I wanted to do a biking event called Street Love Ride. And the Street Love Ride was to connect with Equiticity, boxing out negativity, and any organization that's out here. We want to welcome everybody as family. We developed a model as biking as family. So the purpose of the Street Love Ride, because back when I was on the streets, when things would get rough on the streets, Jesse Jackson and Coalition Push and all these churches would go down on these communities and on these blocks, and they'll have these signs saying "Up with hope, down with dope." So how can you up with hope, down with dope when you can't replace the dope? So again, my objective was to go through the hottest blocks there is in North Lawndale, and not to ride down on them, but just to let them know that we're with you. We want to show you guys some love, and let's work on, fixing these problems that we have on the streets. And, instead of us fixing them, we were going to the passage and asking the passage, what are creative ways to fix, what's going on and what's the problem in our community. And again, I can't thank Oboi enough for sharing his resources, but also putting us up on his wing as traditionally organizations don't do that, because organizations are selfish in our communities. Unfortunately, churches are selfish in our community. We have 233 churches in North Lawndale, and there's about 3 of them out of the 200 plus that's inviteful and that's willing to help you without trying to take personal and hold personal responsibility of saying, I'm the one that did this. And again, I want to thank Oboi, Equiticity, and thank you guys for just showing the love, giving us guidance, and being our big mentors, and allowing us to follow you guys. Thanks. I apologize for being so long.
No, that is beautiful. Thank you so much, Derek. And I feel, we have covered that Chicago core. That is beautiful to hear, the relationships, interrelationships, and your stories. Let's expand out now. Let's go to RB. We're going to go to Oakland and hear your origin story for yourself and your organization, please.
Yeah, so I'm RB. I'm the only boy. I got 4 sisters, so I grew up being the only boy, always getting in trouble. And I was always told as a kid I was a bad kid. And it wasn't until I was 14 years old when I went to a recreational park called Brookdale Park by my house, and the lady helped me fix my bike, and she was like, it's not a such thing as a bad kid. Some kids be mischievous. She said boys are mischievous and they do stuff. That's how they learn in life. Um, so the lady went on to start a nonprofit called Cycles of Change, which just made 25 years. So it wasn't then that I figured out my passion for bikes. It was I graduated high school in 2007. Um, and then I pursued to go to college to get a degree in culinary arts. And at the time, my sister had just had like her third child, and her sons was just like, "Oh man, I like your bike," and they was asking me about my bike, and I was telling them like, "Well, when I was a kid, when I would get in trouble and get put on punishment, like they took our video games, we couldn't go outside, but we used to take our parents' foil and we used to decorate the spokes of our bike because like all we could do is read bike. We could read books or write, and sometimes they got boring, so we decorate our bikes. So my nephews was fascinated with the bikes, and it's like, well, I want to ride a bike like that when I got older. So when I come home from college, my nephews would be like, "Let's go on a bike ride." So I had a 3-year-old nephew, and he was like, "Well, you got a car seat with a sound system." He's like, "How about you take the sound system off and give me a ride?" So I took it off and I gave him a ride. And then my peers at the time, they was getting into rapping, the Trunk Boys. So that meant the song that went viral with like 4 million views, called Scraper Bikes. Um, and then it was pretty much like the birth of the movement. After that, I was like, well, if my nephews want to do it, um, being like a male figure in their life, I was like, well, I gotta support my nephews. So I ended up riding bikes, and it turned out that cooking wasn't actually my passion to getting out of my community, but biking was my passion to changing my community. So after the video was filmed, it's like, well, what do we do next? We started just as a social club. It was just me and my friends riding bikes. Um, and then one of my friends, one of the founders of Straight Bikes, Baby Champ, Tyrone Stevenson Jr., he had an uncle named Tall Paul. So he was like, any kid that got good grades, he was like, you bring me 3 A's and I give you a bike. So like being like 17 and going through like, the growing up phase from 18 to 21, just being able to see like an older guy in the community, um, that's ridden with like gang violence and all kind of other stuff. Just seeing the guys committed to like 3 A's and a B, and he willing to help us fix our bikes. As we got older, we started doing it ourselves. We was like, well, if this guy could do it, uh, let's do it ourselves. And so we start asking people for bike donations. People throwing away stuff. Uh, and people started donating bikes, and we just started making Franken style bikes. Uh, and then eventually it just went like global, like the whole bike culture. It wasn't a BMX bike, and it wasn't a fixie bike or a road bike. It was a mixture of all of them, but just bright flamboyant colors and being able to come out and be seen. And being able to go anywhere in the community because everybody's like, "Oh, it's a scraper bike," as well as our loud sound systems, that we rigged up ourselves. So we're through with a bunch of 6x9s and Big Ten subwoofers, and we'd come through in the middle of the night, 10 o'clock, music blasting. People come out their house in celebration and just like, well, we're proud to see people in our community do it. And the importance of it was that like we didn't realize because we was kids, but we didn't have a bike shop in East Oakland. I mean, we still don't have one. We made a makeshift bike shop of our own, but like we had lack of bike infrastructure as well as the lack of pedestrian infrastructure. So getting older and being and learning more, I became a BPAC commissioner for the last 6 years, and I've been advocating for better biking and walking in East Oakland. Um, and so about like 2 years ago, we proposed to our city that we get a bike lane designed just for us. So the first center ran bike lane, for organization. Um, we got it installed on 90th Avenue in East Oakland. So it's just a center red bike lane. We painted it orange with bright colored spoke rims on it. And yeah.
Thank you so much. That has such great vivid detail and not only family love, history, and impact. I love it. We're going to take it down to Atlanta with Miss Nedra. What's your origin story and the origin story of your organization?
Yeah, good question. It's kind of good to be the last person to like kind of think through that story, that narrative. Similar to Lonnie, just like as a kid, biking around, I grew up in a neighborhood kind of in the county, DeKalb County. So there was no public transportation and no way to get around unless my parents took me somewhere. But on a bike, I could go pretty much anywhere I wanted. And I was more of a girl that liked to play outside. I lived in a double cul-de-sac, and there was nothing but boys in both of the circles. I was the only girl, and so it was either ride my bike, play baseball, or play basketball. So once I got to high school and started playing sports, I stopped riding. It was something that I no longer did. I bused to school. I bused from the south side of DeKalb County to the north side, and I never had the opportunity to ride again. And I remember hearing stories from my dad, like, you rode in college, but I didn't have friends that rode. I had one friend in college who rode, but that was really it. So it was something that I kind of got disconnected from. In my early 20s, I wanted to leave the South. I mean, I had a car, and at the time, it was something that I found a lot of freedom because I could go on road trips. I could go where I wanted to go, when I wanted to go, how fast I wanted to go, basically. But at some point, I saw the limitations of a car, and I decided to move to a city that had public transportation that actually worked. That you could ride a bus, you could ride a train and get somewhere. That I could walk on foot and navigate, and that I could ride a bike. So I moved to New York City, and that just gave me an opportunity to see a world that I could not experience here in the South because due to segregation, even though I bused to a school that was kind of diverse, within the neighborhoods, it was still pretty much segregated. So to go to a Latin community or an Asian community, it was still prohibitive. It's just either because I couldn't go because I was a Black person, and it was still like, hey, you can't come over, or it was just everything was kind of inaccessible. But living in New York City, biking and walking, going across town, I was able to be in neighborhoods that were Dominican or Puerto Rican. I could go to a neighborhood that was Caribbean Black or Haitian. I could go to a neighborhood that was Little Chinatown, Italian. Like, the world was very fascinating. And so that opened me up to not only other cultures, but even I think it helped me to connect my cultures to other people's cultures and understand chosen friends who became, more like family in a way that I could never have if I stayed encapsulated in a car. So I am a social worker, and so I bring that into the work that I do. I started biking just sheerly for the love and for something as a way for transportation, but getting to the whole idea of tours, I've never really been one into tours personally. I think there's a whole expectation about tours that it's mostly kind of this intellectual thing. But I started doing tours. One, I was burnt out from doing social work. And then two, I was also let go from a job. And so three, it really came from this place, this heart-centered place. It was about making connections. Having lived in New York City and in Seattle and coming back to Atlanta, we still are very much segregated. And with a lot of the gentrification that by the time I moved back here was in process, building those connections between people was something that I felt that was necessary. It was an imperative. It was important to really look at the place that we were, the neighborhoods, these what I will say are sacred sites where not only some sort of action happened or where people were born or you know, what holds down some sort of history or it, you know, we needed to really understand each other as people. So when we go on tours, it's really about building community on that tour, be it we're on foot or on bike. So I think that's the origin story of, you know, myself, but also the organization that I run. Yeah. And I mean, it was just listening to everyone is like, you know, our own story is what brings us to this work and like what's been able to sustain to keep me here. And I'll just wrap up with this. I personally had kind of I stopped riding my bike, you know, because of the work. Like it becomes a lot about advocacy, it's a lot of community engagement, and it gets tiring after a while. But, you know, the thing that really keeps me here is the fact that the bicycle is a place of freedom for me, and also a source of being able to connect to people that I do enjoy. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Nedra. And all of the stories were so inspiring and just that connection. And I'm so glad that everyone answered the call, however it presented in your life, to kind of stick with that, even in the moments where you're kind of like, oh, I think I should be doing something else, but sticking to that and making that heart-centered decision and seeing how much it has impacted you, but also so many other people. And to that end, so many different examples of community mobility rituals like community bicycle rides, neighborhood walking tours, group scooter rolls, public transit excursions. What type of community mobility rituals and experiences does your organization specifically curate? And we'll start with RB for this one.
I mean, we call it getting active for our community. So I mean, my organization promotes a going green in the hood lifestyle, which means we commit to riding our bikes. I ride my bike to the grocery store. I ride my bike to the library. Anywhere locally that I can ride my bike, I ride my bike. And we tend to take over the street. Like when we ride, we take the lane is ours. Like we taking the lane. And most of the time we ride in the middle of the street. So just being able to come out and promote like a positive presence in our community. So our rides is traditionally we ride a single file line, and it just looks like a long snake line of bikes coming down the street, similar to what we call in the Bay Area like a high-speed train. So this whole bunch of bikes just wiggling up and down the street, swerving, having fun, enjoying it. As well as like we advocate for bike infrastructure. So we got 90th. We advocated for like I say like 100 streets in East Oakland, and 87 of them got repaved. But it just took us to come out and listen to our community, and be able to address like our lack of not having, so our lack of infrastructure, our lack of access. So we partner with like local and city organizations, to bring the access to our residents, as well as enjoy creating greenery in our community.
Awesome. And what about you, Coach Derek? What community mobility rituals does your organization curate?
Community rituals that my organization carries, like we stumbled on this. It wasn't, none of this was planned. We go as we see fit, and Boxing Out Negativity would do these community bike rides, and we would ride through the community. And our organization have varieties of different cliques and gangs as a part of our organization. So it was very inspirational when we ride through the community, and you know, we could ride down some of the hottest blocks. And normally these young men on these blocks would throw up their gang signs. But whenever Boxing Out Negativity come through, they throw up the unity sign. So it was like a sneak discipline was happening. So a lot of the guys want to join the bike ride. So with that, we have created peace treating rides with different cliques, different organizations, with people that wouldn't normally be seen together. So through biking, we created a culture of peace. And with all of that biking in our community, now there's bike lanes all through North Lawndale. The funny part was no one in the community liked these bike lanes until they seen Boxing Out Negativity was a part of. And that just showed you that when people make choices and don't add anybody, whether it's good or bad, you know, people are not gonna like it. But as long as you add the people on, they feel accepted. So Boxing Out Negativity ritual is like, man, being accepted and also making the common people be accepted, which are the people that you see on the news every day that the media be giving these bad names and all the other things, but you know, they don't deserve these bad names, you know. So all people want is a chance. And Boxing Out Negativity is like the spokesperson, the spokes organization for the people and by the people.
Love that.
Amazing. All right, let's go into this next one to Mr. Oboi. I'm so excited to ask you this. Why, Oboi, why are CMRs important and why should they be practiced?
Sure. It's a great question. So let's first talk about the inequities that exist in our neighborhoods. Unfortunately, health inequities, violence, lack of mobility, unemployment, poverty, and we could go down the list. We know, and the research tells us that community mobility rituals could have an impact on removing some of those inequities. We know people riding and walking more will have an impact on improving our health. And it's Black and brown people with the greatest level of health inequities. We know increasing mobility will give people greater access to employment opportunities, and increasing mobility as a way that happens hyperlocal at the neighborhood level, where people are more interested in walking and biking and moving around our neighborhoods, attracts more retail. When our streets are more vibrant, more retail is attracted to our neighborhoods, which creates jobs in our neighborhoods. We know when our streets are more vibrant, when people in our neighborhoods are socializing more, we can have a potential on reducing violence. So community mobility rituals, growing mobility at the neighborhood level has the potential to decrease, remove racialized inequities that exist in our neighborhoods. This is important work. It's easy to look at this work, to look at, RB and the scrapers and the people that he's riding down the street. It's easy to look at the work that Nedra is doing in Atlanta or Derek is doing in North Lawndale, and to just sort of brush it off as not important. However, for the people who are participating on the ride, who are familiar with this work, I could tell you that it's transformative. It was transformative for me as a person. It's been transformative for the people who I interact with, and it's been transformative in the neighborhoods that we serve. It is important work. It needs resources. We scrape and just do everything with little. However, it needs resources for this work to even do more.
The resources are so important. That's been a recurring theme that we've heard in this conversation. And in speaking of resources, from starting your organization to where you are now, how has your work on CMRs evolved over time? And Nedra, this is directed to you.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I like the term, the community movement ritual. That lens is a good way to really codify the work, because sometimes we get caught up in a language of process, and it's really not about a process or even design. A lot of it is call and response. It's like old spiritual, the Negro spirituals, old Baptist Black churches, call and response is, we answered the call called us, the work continued to call us, our communities call us, the needs around employment, around knowing identity, who are we, where do we belong, how do we fit in, the call for resources from bikes to infrastructure to actually redesigning so that the streets and community life is what we want it to be and not what some academia or institution or policy says it needs to be. We are the ones who bring life to the street. So thinking of resources, I mean, if I had not have been like, I don't know, simply inspired, because generally I'm kind of a shy person. I'm not one to go knocking on doors and asking people for things, but that's what I did when I started doing this. And there was a friend, Neil Walker, who is an LCI league cycling instructor. I happened to get directed to him because I was going to bike shops asking for bicycles, and he helped me get my first set of bikes. Also helped me to learn about becoming an LCI. Dave Simmons was my coach when I went through that process, who's on the call today. And going through that experience, I learned rules of the road, how to properly ride a bicycle, how to be safe on the bike and keep other people safe on a bicycle, on a ride, and just being an asset to my community in that way that was needed and is still needed today. So when it comes to resources, right now, it's like this tension of trying to get resources, work other jobs to bring in more resources, and to also stay stable financially and organizationally. And I will say that has helped to really always evolve the work that I do. The rituals have been around education, so bringing that in as a practice. In our tours, we talk about, how to be safe on a bike, because we're not being led by cops or anything, and it's a small group. So how do we, sometimes it's just me as a leader. How do we stay safe on the bike? So, and most people who do go on a bike tour, they never really ride a bike in most of their lives. So, but I want them to be inspired from this to continue riding. So having some basic know-how is a part of doing that. So from teaching classes to leading tours, that's one evolution. I would say the transformation around that personal transformation that Oboi spoke to is very real. I see myself differently as an individual in my community and in myself. And I think that other people, when they come on a tour and they start listening to stories, whether they're from Atlanta or from some other place, they begin to think about where they're from and how these narratives are similar to where the community they live in, or like the idea of, okay, so I'm a white person, but I live in a Black community. Maybe I can begin to not only learn, but like deepen my knowledge and find ways to share. So the way that our work is transforming is not only are we, going to continue tours now that we're opening back up again, but we are creating a way for partnerships with organizations, as well as just the everyday person really is the ones who are doing this work of preservation, using the model of tours. And so it's more than just like us, so it's replication. And I think that for me has been the biggest quest, which is to not only have this a transformational thing for people who come on a tour, or even for myself, but that communities can be transformed because the history that has not been necessarily been valued by, say, the cities or the towns locally, that those stories can be pulled out and can be uplifted. And because the people say that they're important, that there's more connections and opportunity to really connect in locally on a micro level, and that it's there's more advocates that are created from doing that kind of work. and also an opportunity to share not only the burden, but also the joys and the glory that comes with doing that work, which we all need to feel good about where we're from. We need to feel good about where we live. We need to and hold on to hold on to those things. So yeah, I think that's where we are around like ritual making, and really making this more of a practice that we like we as in the collective we are doing.
Beautiful. And I love that notion of celebration as part of the CMR of local assets and connection. Here's our last question, and we're gonna put it out to RB. RB, how do you see this connection between the CMR, racial equity, and reducing violence in our neighborhoods? It's a big one. It's a big one, but we know you have that answer there. So please let us in.
I mean, my relation is just building in my community, just seeing like the despair that we face in East Oakland. So like, I mean, we have a large Black and Latino presence in East Oakland. Well, actually, in Oakland, it's only 17%. Oakland is Black, but we make up 85% of the bicycle and pedestrian stops in Oakland. So, I mean, being able to address that issue, traffic stops went down in East Oakland. Thanks to my adversary with interdepartmental departments in Oakland, as well as like our housing and our like to fresh produce in East Oakland. So being able to offer people like free ride passes for BART or free bikes because we don't have bikes here in East Oakland. Free bike repair. Free access to pick up produce. During quarantine, we did World Central Kitchen where people prep meals, and we gave it out to our community right here at the library. As well as since we couldn't teach kids how to fix their own bikes, we fixed their bikes for them. So just being able to address the lack of investment that our city had towards our neighborhoods and being able to advocate and secure funding, and especially with major corporations. Because major corporations come into inner cities to try to get community support for their own agenda, but don't think about the agenda of the community. So being able to hold bike share accountable, even though we don't have bike share in East Oakland, our idea of bike share would be a bike lending library, which we came together with 14 community groups, and we applied for a transformative community climate grant, which the city was awarded. Which now we're gonna be able to open a facility called The Spot that it'll be bike lending as well as bike repair. People can check out stuff. People can get discounts for like Clipper cards, so that way they can ride public transit as far as like AC Transit, BART, Amtrak. Youth get half off. So if they sign up for Clipper card, what cost me $2 will cost them $1. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
And now we are going to take it to our audience questions. Don't forget, if you have a question that you want our panelists to answer, drop it in the Q&A box. The first one, we've been hearing a theme of like bike safety and things like that. Anonymous would like to know, some ride participants don't feel comfortable street riding without a police escort. Others don't feel comfortable riding with police escort. What ways provide comfort and safety without an escort? Oboi, would you like to answer that?
Sure, and I'll be brief because I know we only have a few minutes here before we come to a close, and perhaps we'll be able to get in one or two more questions from the audience. So generally, Equiticity does not invite the police to ride with us. The way we address safety is by partnering with community-based organizations that are on the ground in neighborhoods, from the beginning. So we start with the process of envisioning together what the work is that we want to do going forward. We're not coming with a flyer and asking a partner to put a logo on there. We're starting from the beginning with community-based organizations in the neighborhood and working together from the visioning to the planning to the actual execution of the ride. And those community-based organizations make the decision on how do we do this in a way that's safe. Some of our community partners do invite the police to partner. Some of our community partners do not. And they, like Derek, they're on the ground. They're doing violence intervention work. So they're talking to the people on the streets saying, hey, we're coming through. We want you all to participate. Help us keep this safe. And in the many, many years that we've been doing this work, fortunately, we've been able to keep our rides safe.
Awesome.
Great. We have one other question from the audience that is asking, yeah, how many bikes? I'm gonna shoot this to Nedra. Nedra, how many bikes do you have? And do you have bikes for different situations or occasions?
So that's a good question because I mean, there's so many types of bikes that are out there. Technically, I have 3 bikes, but one is a 15-year-old single speed. The frame is bent because of a crash I had. The other one is a road bike, a 1990s Trek, which I think is a great road cycle. It's a steel frame bike. It's lovely. And a new bike that I am very happy to ride. I will say it's more like a gravel bike, which is really popular right now. A friend got those via donation from Cecily. And I will say for the streets, the bumpy, potholey streets in Atlanta, it's perfect. But I use them for whatever I decide I want to do. It's not necessarily situational for me. It's just more of a, what do I want to ride today? And what can my knees accept?
That's important. And we have another question, which is perfect timing. How does our attendees get in touch with each of you? We can start with RB, your contact, anything you want to plug, your website, social media, things like that.
So, I mean, you can follow me on social media. So my Facebook is Chef Boy RB. My Instagram is Scraper Bike Mobbing. And so you can follow, check out my work, check out our videos on YouTube, Scraper Bike Team. And so the 2 organizations I represent is the original Scraper Bike Team, and I work at the Oakland Public Library. And I offer programs on both.
Awesome. Nedra, how can people contact you?
So I just put in a chat. We have a website, Civil Bikes, civilbikes.com. We are on IG, Facebook, and Twitter. Those are the handles. We're starting a preservation festival this year. It's Save Your Spaces, and a website and social is forthcoming. So. Yeah, get in contact. Love to hear from you.
Great. Who's next? Who else needs to be outreach? Share a plug here before we wrap up. I know we have a moment. I think we have to probably make an audible call, but that's okay. Did everybody get to share? Oboi? No.
Equiticity.org is our website, and Equiticity across social media platforms.
Coach Derek. Coach Derek here.
It looks like you may have froze. I could say boxingoutnegativity.org is his website.
Okay, awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to all of our panelists. Next Friday, we're going to do it again, same time, same place. We're going to be discussing the ritual of planning, a curators panel. We're going to have lots of awesome panelists as well, so you can register the same way you did for this one, if you didn't already, and make sure you tell 3 or 30 friends to join and be a part of this wonderful conversation as well.
Yeah, thank you so much to each of our panelists. Oboi, thank you. Derek, thank you. Ari, thank you. Nedra, thank you very, very much. We're learning a lot as we're doing this webinar, but it was a beautiful kickoff. And thank you to all of the great questions and all of the good vibes in the chat. And we will be back next Friday, same time, same bad channel. Thank you, everybody.
For folks who are able to stay on for another 3 minutes, I would love to play a beautiful video because it'll really give you a feel for the impact of community mobility rituals. Is that all right? May we do that, please? All right, one moment. All right, here we go.
Baby champ. We ride Skittles, Oreos, Mambas, Pringles, whatever snacks we eatin' on, we bringin' them. Ice cream, paint jobs, Starburst inside. Give me a break, Kit Kat on the flip side. I'm the scraper bike king. What do you mean we get hungry? Switch the themes. Got whips that you ain't even seen. Now everybody wanna join the scraper bike team, cause they know we go. Everybody sitting on foes, selling don'ts on 6s for the low. If y'all ready to mob, then let's go. Whoa, two-tone don't, red and black. Coca-Cola be the theme in the can in the back. I switched it up and came right back. And if my tire get low, I get some fix it flat. Siding, driving, what are you mobbing? Kissing for our cars as we profiling. We the scraper bike team and we stay mobbing. Kissing for our cars as we profiling. Siding, driving, what are you mobbing? Kissing for our cars as we profiling. We the scraper bike team and we stay mobbing. Kissing for our cars as we profiling. We keep it lit, foot heel the strip. Doing moving down the way while stopping music from the kicks. We back at it again. Out past 10, bike slapping, gang, yes we mobbing. Hit a right on big walk, letting all the traffic off. Elbow in the air while we slapping that brick wall. Two-tone paint, white on white with the glow. Dipped in sauce, little player, I'm a boss. I run the scraper bike team. Snacks be the thing. Root beer float, two-tone brown with the cream. Boston baked beans, fire in your rings. When 5-0 come, I take a ticket for the team. Continue moving mean in the hood, going green. Baby champion, the scraper bikes is on the scene. When 5-0 come, I take a ticket for the team. Continue moving mean in the hood, going green. Siding, driving, what are you mobbing? Kissing for our cars as we profiling. We the scraper bike team and we stay mobbing. Kissing for our cars as we profiling. Siding, driving, what are you mobbing? Kissing for our cars as we profiling. We the scraper bike team and we stay mobbing. Kissing for our cars as we profiling. Siding, driving, what are you mobbing? Scraper bike team and we stay mobbing. Kissing for our cars as we profiling. Scraper bike team and we stay mobbing. Kissing for our cars as we profiling.
Thank you, everyone. RB, great work, brother.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sorry,
Nedra. Thank you, Nedra. Thank you, Coach Derek. Thank you to our host, Lonnie, Cecily, and thank you, Christian, for all the work in the background. Pleasure doing this work with you all.